Hey, what's up, everybody? BDL44 coming at you with another video. All right, the Nets are in real trouble, you guys. They're down 0-2 at this point, and Kevin Durant was 4 for 17. Now, he hit 18 of 20 free throws, if I read that correctly. That's where he got the bulk of his points. This is a bad, bad, bad thing for the Nets, and the reason why I'm pushing the panic button is because this is a situation where it's the Boston, I think it was either the Boston announcer or the Nets announcer. I forgot. I was listening to a link, as you know how I do. But the announcer had essentially said, what the Boston Celtics are able to do is throw different looks at KD constantly. Every so few plays, he has an entirely different person who's very good at defense defending him. Marcus Smart, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Hal Horford. I mean, it literally just goes on and on and on. And they're being very, very physical with him. And through two games, the referees are allowing them to be. Um, Kyrie didn't really have it the same way tonight. It looked like guys had heavy legs. It looked like guys had, just didn't really have the sharpness about their shot tonight, and it showed. Bruce Brown was very efficient. I think maybe it would have been best for them to kind of lean on him even more so than they did, being that he barely missed. And Goran Dragic also was fantastic with the minutes that he was given. But that's about it. I mean, they just did not get enough. The Nets team has the same problem the Lakers have, and we've said this a million times. So if you follow me, bear with me. But the Lakers have this problem. The Milwaukee Bucks have this problem. And even though it doesn't, well, no, I won't even bring them up because it doesn't apply. But the teams that have built their franchise this season on three players, three max contracts, the rest of the bench ain't that good, man. That's just what it comes down to. If you don't have those top three guys, your bench is going to be subpar. Now, the Nets, they have some key bench players, but guys who would have gave them 15 points tonight, or another guy who would have maybe gave them 10 points here and there, they just didn't use. So LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin, I just think it's a big mistake, huge mistake. When you consider who the bigs are for the Boston Celtics, it's not like, and I'm saying this only because I think of these guys that they're not too far out of the same lane. Look, Al Horford is playing great, and Al Horford has not fallen off. Al Horford is a fantastic defensive and offensive player that can stretch the floor for you. So his the fluidity of his game, the ability to pass and make people better. He's the perfect guy to have on the floor when when Robert Williams is out. And then Daniel Tice is also a heck of a complimentary player right now to have when Robert Williams is out, who you feel pretty confident can hold you down for long periods of time if somebody's injured or something. Tice is solid. I don't think, and I'm saying this with an understanding that they have different strengths and weaknesses, and that does affect matchups, but I don't think LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin are too far off. Not too far off from where Al Horford and Daniel Tice is. I do think that Al Horford and Daniel Tice are more productive players today in today's league. They are more productive right now. But it's not like I think LaMarcus Aldridge is so far away from being able to effectively help the team that he just should not be on the floor. I don't think that. Now, Blake Griffin, I don't know, because his game, it has never really translated much defensively, right? So if Blake Griffin ain't hitting his shot and he's slow of foot, he's not helping you defensively. LaMarcus Aldridge gets you a couple blocks a game. So I don't see him being as much of a defensive liability in my head. Now, I haven't watched him, so if it's a situation where they have nothing left, I always want to say, hey, forget it. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I just look at that Nets bench. I don't think they have enough, and I think they've shrunk their bench. And it doesn't help you when you don't have enough. Steve Nash, I was listening to pundits today, and they reminded me that, the Nets' big three said that they didn't want a coach in there who was going to be basically coaching too much. They wanted somebody just a face down there so they could kind of run plays and do things freely. If that report is accurate, which I do remember that when it came out, but if that is the case, that was a bad decision. Bad decision. And it's one I have a hard time believing, to be honest with you, because I think basketball players, you would just think that they would have more of a respect for what coaches do, and the need for having the right guy in place. It's not just about having a guy in a suit on the sidelines calling timeouts. It's about someone who knows how to balance rotations, somebody who knows how to call plays, someone who knows how to hire assistant coaches that can do things that he doesn't know how to do properly, or maybe isn't great at, rather. Having somebody who knows how to lead men and motivate, but also somebody who knows how to simply fall back and manage personalities as they come to him. These different balancing acts are important, and you don't just want to pick up just any old body and say, okay, come on down here, be a suit for us so we can have a free offensive reign. There's more to it than that. You need somebody who can scheme defensively. You need somebody who can call timeouts in a certain with respect to the clock itself, and knowing how to do it. I mean, it's just so many different things the coach has to be responsible for. Probably more than I'm aware of. And I just don't think that you can just get away with just hiring any old body. Do I think the Nets did that? I do. I really like Steve Nash. And I think he could be a fantastic coach someday. And I think he's probably well on his way to being that. I'm sure he's underway. He's on his road. But I don't think I've seen what Steve Nash can do, because he has the same problem that we had here in LA. It's politic ball out there in Brooklyn. Even though it's not the same thing, it's still the same. It's still politic ball in a sense, because you're acquiescing to superstars who have their own thing going on. It's not a bunch of young kids that are just gonna listen to you and do whatever you say. And I think what we're seeing from the Nets has to do with everything falling apart about 3 months ago with James Harden. When they made that trade, they unfortunately traded for somebody who was hurt. And that's the problem. It's really nothing else, honestly. I still like the trade if Ben Simmons was able to help them before the playoffs started, but now that he's just barely getting started, it's too late. It's too late, and that's really the only real problem that the Nets are running into. They just don't have all their horses right now, and I think when we talk about Steve Nash, it's a completely separate issue. It really is. But I don't think it's his fault that things have gone wrong. I just think that if you had a mastermind coach in place, they would have made the adjustments from game 1 to 2 that would have made it so that KD had things freed up a bit better than he did tonight. That's basically what I'm here to say to you. It's not that Steve Nash ain't smart enough to come up with the schemes, just to say you don't have the experience as a coach in these situations to execute those schemes if he does have them. To get those things implemented in place over the amount of time he needed to get that done tonight. KD is a player who's going to be entering the downside of his career. So you can't expect him to be able to shake off physicality like this. He's already a guy who's thin. You're not going to see him be able to just put his elbows out and take this contact over and over and over again. This is going to get worse for the Nets, which is why I'm pushing the panic button. My favorite thing to say over these last 24 hours is, if a team doesn't have the ability to switch styles, if they don't have that versatility to be able to swap some players around so they can have a totally different way of doing things to throw the other team off, if you don't have that ability, you're out of here. I don't think the Nets have that ability very much. I look at their roster and I say they're just not talented enough from top to bottom to lean on anything other than KD and Kyrie. And KD and Kyrie are jump shooters. Now, that's not to say that they're not fantastic players that drive at the rim and all that. Of course they are. In fact, these are two of the greatest finishers of all time. That's not the point. But in this series, against those bodies, they're being pushed away from the paint. They're jump shooters. See what I mean? They don't have the ability to enjoy the luxury of dunking the ball very often or getting pure up layups and stuff like that. They're being pushed out of the paint by guys who are just bigger and more talented defensively than the teams that they've been running into all together. I mean, Boston's the best defensive team in the Eastern Conference right now. It's between them and the Heat, but I'm leaning toward them, to be honest with you, because to see what they're doing without Robert Williams, I never dreamed their defense would look this good without Tom Lord. And so, as far as I'm concerned, they're a huge threat right now for everybody, and I don't think the Nets can beat them. I don't think the Nets can beat them. And judging by what I seen from game 1 to 2, the best bet the Nets have is the Boston Celtics game not coming on the road. Because if they continue to run the same stuff, it should work. When you have a game where Bruce Brown don't hardly miss and Goran Dragic don't miss, you know what I'm saying? It's very difficult to expect that they're going to play even better. Even though the game's going back home, you're not going to get no more out of your bench than you already got. This game ain't going to get any less physical than it's been because they're going to keep pushing them around. Now, what the Nets should be doing right now, what Steve Nash should be probably pulling out of his hat is I think we need to be officiated differently card. That's where you take it. That's what Phil Jackson usually does in situations like this. Because you understand that's where you're getting beat. The fact of the matter is they're allowing them to be physical. And because they're allowing them to be physical, you're not able to kind of shake any of that off. Now, you did see, of course, as we said, KD got to the line, 20 times? So the whistle was called. And unfortunately, that didn't translate for him. And that's something that he's going to have to figure out. You know what I mean? If they're bumping you and bumping you off your shots, but you are able to get to the line, that means that there's nothing the referees can necessarily do for you. They're not already doing. What it also tells me is that Celtics' depth is beating the heck out of the Nets. Because if KD's going to the line 20 times, then that means, obviously, in theory, 10 fouls were called, right? Just roughly. And you know what I mean? That should in theory put them in foul trouble, obviously, right? They were able to keep on withstanding that and not have any issues guarding him, and that's where it comes down. I don't think the Nets have to worry about the offensive side as much as they do the defensive side, though. Let me make sure I'm gathering my thought properly, because what's happening is they actually, I think it's the opposite. I guess is what I'm really thinking. They need to worry about how they're going to score the ball. They suck so bad defensively, so they need to worry about that too. But I don't think they can improve defensively because they don't have the personnel to necessarily do that, which also keeps them at a disadvantage in this series. You see where this is going? My whole thought about the Nets getting this thing in 7, I didn't anticipate them dropping both games in Boston. I really didn't. Now, that's not to say they can't stretch this thing out to 7, but the fact that Blake Griffin ain't coming back till game 4, best case scenario, they somehow win game 3, of course, and then Blake Griffin gets implemented into the lineup in game 4. Now, if y'all follow me closely, you know how I feel about players going in and out of lineups and what happens when a player gets inserted into a lineup and when a player gets extracted from a lineup. With either, it usually flusters the team and throws them into a situation where they're probably not going to win that particular game. That's just an observation I've noticed being a Laker fan. There's a lot of times when we bring guys back, it doesn't work. You're bringing in somebody that's not just coming back, but someone who's never played with y'all before. And he's not like he's a jump shooter and somebody who's got all these fluid game, this fluid ability to make everybody kind of just fit in with him real easy. No, he's actually one of the most awkward fits, in terms of player style in the entire league. That's who they're going to be bringing into their lineup for the very first time in a 2-1 situation. And that's assuming this is the best case scenario. This is assuming they're able to do something they weren't able to do in game 1 or 2. In other words, that game I don't expect them to win. So essentially what I'm telling you is, because I don't expect them to win game 4 just off of my little mantra about players coming back into the lineup, game 3 is more of a must-win than any normal Game 3 situation. Because I almost look at Game 4 as an impossible situation. Unless they gingerly bring Ben Simmons into the fold. And even in doing that, how does that get the most out of him? Because you need him to defend. It's just a nightmare. And so, I really don't know what the Nets should do. I think you just got to roll the dice, because it's like this. It's like this. Either you're going to force yourself into a situation where you're definitely going to lose, or you're going to put yourself in a position to bring a player back who's going to be an awkward fit. And that may potentially put you in a position where you're probably going to lose. You see what I'm saying? That's how I'm seeing it. It's just a bunch of losing for the Nets. I don't think it's going to look too good for them. Part of me thinks they should probably just not bring Ben Simmons back, to be honest with you. Because there's so much pressure on him to come in and be a part of something that he has literally never been a part of. Be something that basically he's not in the best condition to be, which is a defensive stopper in a series with extremely high conditioned and high level athletes that I would argue he would have trouble dealing with even if he was at his best self. So, they're going to have him off for multiple years. This is a back situation. I don't see the harm in saying, oops, he's just not ready for Game 4. To be honest with you, I don't see the harm in that. Especially if Game 3 doesn't go right. If they lose Game 3, shut Ben down. That's over with. And you hate to feel that way about the playoffs, but dude, when you know the matchup's bad and you know he is your future, you know what I mean? Because as long as he's going into the offseason healthy, that's a good thing in terms of him for the Nets. They want to win this championship right now. KD's, Kyrie's, their timeline is right now for sure, but let's just be real. Ben Simmons is supposed to be a player that they keep after they leave. So, you got to kind of value him with a certain level of respect that doesn't have anything to do with them. So, I don't know if they see it that way, but they traded him with that type of value in mind, so they should, for what it's worth. So anyway, man, I'm going to get back and try to see if I can catch at the end of this Philadelphia-Toronto game. Last I checked, Toronto was up. That was pretty interesting to me. The game might actually be over already, but we'll see. And then, of course, we got Chicago and Milwaukee coming up. I'm not really expecting a surprise there. I expect Chicago will go down 0-2. Yeah, it's just Giannis, y'all. It's just Giannis. It is what it is. So, that's what I got, man. BDF 44. I thank you all for watching, and I'm out.